I'm 34, male, assistant manager at a logistics company during the week, hardware store on weekends when overtime isn't cutting it. I drive a 2019 Ford F-250 that I paid off last year. No liens, no cosigners, just mine. I mention that because it becomes the centerpiece of everything that follows. My girlfriend and I had been together for 3 years. She moved in about 8 months before all this happened. Things had their rough patches like any relationship does, but I thought we were in a solid place. She had this way of making you feel comfortable, easy, like you were always on the same team. I've since figured out that was less a personality trait and more a strategy she'd gotten really good at. On a Tuesday morning, she asked to borrow my truck. Her car was making a noise she hadn't gotten around to dealing with, and she needed to haul some furniture a friend was giving her. I said yes without a second thought. We'd been together 3 years. She was on my insurance as an approved driver. I handed her the keys before I left for my morning shift and went about my day. I was on my lunch break when my phone buzzed with a text from her. It said, "Hey, so I bumped into a parked car in the lot on Meridian. It's just a small scratch on their bumper. Don't worry though, I just drove off. Nobody saw. We're fine." I read that 3 times. Not because I was confused. I understood every word. I read it 3 times because I needed a moment to absorb the specific level of casual confidence it takes to commit a hit and run, text the registered owner of the vehicle you used to do it, and close the whole thing out with "we're fine," like we just narrowly avoided a traffic cone. We're fine. That word, "we," is doing a lot of heavy lifting in that sentence. She hit someone's parked car, left without leaving a note or her information, and had already decided we were partners in the decision. Like I'd been consulted. Like I'd agreed to anything. I typed back, "Thanks for telling me." That's it. Set my phone face down on the break room table and thought about it for a minute. Here's the thing she didn't stop to consider. That truck is registered in my name. My plates. My insurance. If the other driver reported the hit and run, and there was no reason they wouldn't, the plate would come back to me. I'd be the one getting calls from their insurance company. I'd be the one potentially facing a hit and run charge with zero knowledge of what actually happened, no involvement, and no way to defend myself because she'd already left the scene and handed me the liability like it was nothing. In most states, leaving the scene of an accident involving property damage is a misdemeanor. In my state, it absolutely is. And since my name is on that registration, I had every reason to be worried about how this could come back on me if I stayed quiet. So I walked out to the parking lot and called the non-emergency police line. I explained the situation clearly. My girlfriend had borrowed my truck that morning. She'd texted me to tell me she'd struck a parked vehicle in the lot on Meridian Avenue and left the scene, and I was reporting it voluntarily because the vehicle was registered in my name. I told them I had the text message as documentation. The dispatcher connected me to an officer. He took down the details, location, approximate time, description of my truck, the situation. Then he asked the question I'd been expecting. "Is she available for questioning?" "She still has my truck right now," I said. "But I can tell you exactly where she said it happened, and I have the text she sent me." He paused. "Sir, I want to be upfront with you. By reporting this, you understand that if the other driver has already filed a report, this information will be matched and corroborated. Your cooperation will be noted, and it does matter. But the driver of your vehicle could be cited." "I understand," I said. "You're doing the right thing," he said. I went back inside. Finished my shift. Didn't call her. Didn't warn her. Didn't give her any heads up that anything had changed. When I got home, that evening she was on the couch like it was any other Tuesday. The furniture she'd picked up was stacked near the wall. She smiled when I walked in and asked how my shift was. "Fine," I said. "How was yours?" "Good. Got everything picked up." She shrugged. "And that thing with the car earlier, seriously, don't stress. It was tiny. Nobody's going to notice." "Right," I said. I watched her go back to her phone. Completely relaxed. Completely unbothered. And that's what got under my skin more than the hit and run itself. Not the accident. Accidents happen to everyone. It was the absolute certainty in her voice that this was a closed matter. That I would shrug, agree, and move on. That "we're fine" was the end of the story. She had never once stopped to wonder if I might not be okay with it. The assumption that I'd absorb it quietly. That's what this whole story is actually about. 2 days passed. She didn't bring it up again, and neither did I. On day 3, she got a call. I wasn't in the room, but I heard her voice shift from relaxed to clipped and defensive pretty quickly. She came into the kitchen holding her phone with the specific expression she used when she needed me to receive something uncomfortable. "That was a police officer," she said. "He wants me to come in and talk about an accident." I poured my coffee. "The car on Meridian," she added, watching my face.
I said.
"Did you say something to somebody?" Her voice had a sharp edge to it. I looked at her over my mug. "I called the non-emergency line and reported it the same day you texted me." The silence after that had actual weight. "You reported me?" "I reported the incident involving my vehicle," I said, "which I was responsible for since it's registered in my name." She cycled through about 4 different expressions in 5 seconds. Surprise, disbelief, something calculating, and then she landed on furious. "I told you it was fine. Someone's parked car got hit, and you drove away," I said. "That's a hit and run regardless of the size of the scratch." She pivoted fast. She was always good at pivoting. "So you just, without even talking to me, you called the police on your own girlfriend?" "I called the police about an accident involving my truck," I said again. Same tone. "The same day it happened. I also forwarded them the text you sent me." That one landed differently. She hadn't accounted for that. The text she'd sent so casually, so confidently, the "don't worry, we're fine" text, was now sitting inside a police report as written documentation. Her voice dropped. "Why would you do that to me?" And there it was. The full reframe. I had now done something to her by reporting a crime she committed using my vehicle. I had betrayed her by not quietly absorbing the liability. By following the law, I had wronged her. I didn't argue it. I just said, "You should talk to a lawyer before you go in." She left the kitchen. I finished my coffee. The entitled behavior that followed was something else. She called her mother, who called me within 20 minutes, voice full of that maternal indignation that treats a grown man like a child who needs correcting. "She's devastated," her mother said. "You need to think about what you've done to this relationship." "She hit a parked car and drove away," I said. "I reported it because the car is mine. It was an accident. Leaving the scene was T." She hung up. Then came the move I really wasn't expecting. My girlfriend went through my phone while I was in the shower. I didn't find out until later. She accidentally referenced a detail from a conversation I'd had that she had no other way of knowing. She was fishing for leverage. Some text, some receipt, something she could reframe and use. She didn't find what she was looking for, but the fact that she looked told me where her head was. After that, she went to 2 of our mutual friends and told them I'd turn her into the cops over a fender bender because I was trying to get her in trouble out of spite. She was building a version of events before anyone could hear mine. One of those friends texted me asking if I was really going after her like that. I sent him the screenshot of her original text. He went quiet pretty fast after that. 3 days before her meeting with the officer, she tried a completely different approach. She came to me calm, almost apologetic, said she'd been thinking about everything and she understood why I was upset, but that she needed me to call the police back and tell them it was a misunderstanding, that I'd overreacted, that she hadn't understood the severity of it. She actually said those words. "Tell them you overreacted." I want to be clear about what she was asking. She wanted me to contact law enforcement, walk back an accurate report I had already filed, and potentially expose myself to issues around filing a false report, all to help her avoid the consequences of something she had done. "I'm not doing that," I said. "Why are you being so rigid about this?" "Because I reported what happened accurately. I can't unreport accurate information." She leaned forward. "I need you to fix this." "I didn't break anything," I said. She stared at me for a moment. Then something in her shifted, and her voice went flat and certain. "If this goes anywhere," she said, "we're done." I nodded slowly. "That might be where we are anyway." She went in for questioning. The officer who had taken my original report followed up with me afterward as a courtesy, since my vehicle was involved, and I'd been cooperative from day one. Turns out the other driver had already filed a report the same day of the incident. She'd gotten a partial plate and a vehicle description. When my report came in with the matching plate, the location, the time frame, and the text message, it all lined up perfectly. There wasn't much wiggle room to dispute anything. My girlfriend was cited for leaving the scene of an accident involving property damage, a misdemeanor under our state's vehicle code. She was responsible for the damages to the other driver's vehicle, which her insurance, not mine, would need to address. She received a fine, points on her license, and her insurance premium went up. Her license wasn't suspended for a first-time citation of this type, but the financial hit was real. Then the officer told me something I hadn't expected. The other vehicle, he said. The parked car. The driver was an elderly woman who'd had hip replacement surgery 2 weeks prior. She came out of her physical therapy appointment to find her rear bumper caved in. She was standing in that parking lot for 45 minutes trying to figure out what happened before someone helped her file the report. She had a cane. I didn't respond for a second. She wanted me to pass along that she appreciated someone coming forward, he added. I thought about that for a long time. My girlfriend had driven away from a woman on a cane standing in a parking lot after surgery and texted me, "Don't worry, we're fine," and genuinely expected that to be the end of it. She moved out 3 weeks later. No big blow-up, just boxes, tension, and her mother's car parked outside twice in 1 week. The night before she left, she came into the living room and sat across from me. "I hope you're proud of yourself," she said. "I reported an accident involving my property." I said, "Yeah, I'm okay with that decision. You ruined something over nothing. You hit a woman's car. She just had surgery. She stood in that parking lot for 45 minutes. You texted me like it was a minor inconvenience." I looked at her. "You expected me to absorb the liability, stay quiet, and call it love. That's not something I was going to do." She didn't have anything to say to that. She left the room. The next morning, she finished loading up and drove away. I stood in the apartment for a minute just to feel the quiet. Here's where it takes a turn I didn't see coming. About 6 weeks after she moved out, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. It was the woman whose car had been hit. She'd gotten my contact information through the insurance claims process and called to thank me personally. We talked for about 10 minutes. She was warm and sharp and a little funny. She mentioned she'd been nervous to go back to that physical therapy plaza after what happened. I told her I was sorry it occurred. She said, "You didn't do it." "No," I said, "but it was my truck." "And you reported it anyway," she said. "That's not nothing, young man. I'm 34. Nobody had called me that in years." It hit differently than I expected. She also mentioned, almost as an afterthought, that because my girlfriend had been cited for leaving the scene, the other driver's insurance company had pursued her insurance directly and recovered every dollar. The repair was fully covered. She was made completely whole. Now here's the part of the story I'm most satisfied about, and I won't pretend otherwise. After she moved out, my ex started telling a very specific version of events to anyone who would listen. In her version, I had weaponized the police against her over a minor parking lot accident because I was controlling and wanted to punish her. She was running this story to mutual friends, to people at her job, and this is the part that crossed a real line, to people I worked with. One of my coworkers, someone I'd known for 4 years who had met her exactly twice at work events, came to me and said carefully, "Hey, your ex has been talking to people, including some people from here. I thought you should know." I thanked him. Then I called an attorney. Not to sue her immediately, I wanted to understand my options first. The attorney was straightforward. Defamation in civil court requires demonstrating false statements of fact, that those statements were made to third parties, and that they caused damages. The statements she was making, that I'd reported her out of spite, that I'd gone after her for no reason, that I was controlling, could qualify if she was stating them as fact to my professional contacts in a way that affected my reputation at work. He told me to document everything. Dates, names, what was said, who heard it, when. I spent 3 weeks doing exactly that. My coworker provided a written account of what he'd been told and when. The mutual friend I'd sent the screenshot to gave me a similar account. I had the original text message. I had the voluntary police report with a timestamp. I had the follow-up documentation showing the citation she'd received. I had a clean, documented timeline going back to the day of the incident. We sent her a cease and desist letter through the attorney. Formal, specific, and very clear that continued defamatory statements to my professional contacts would result in a civil action for damages. The letter cited specific documented instances with dates and named witnesses. She went completely silent. The social media posts stopped. The stories to mutual friends stopped. Everything stopped. And here's what happened when it did. Some of the mutual friends she'd been recruiting started comparing notes. Because her version kept running into one very simple, very inconvenient problem. I had the original text. In her own words, sent voluntarily. She had texted me a written confession and then built an entire alternate narrative around the idea that I was the villain for reading it. About 4 months after everything settled, I ran into one of her close friends at a grocery store. Someone I'd assumed had taken her side fully. She stopped me in the aisle and said quietly, "I just want you to know." She told me the real version. After the letter, she told me what actually happened. I waited. She said she panicked and drove off and then figured you just let it go because you always let things go. She paused. She said she was actually surprised that you called the police. I thought about that on the drive home. She wasn't wrong that I used to let things go. I did. But there's a difference between being easygoing and being a person who absorbs other people's messes because it's easier than having a boundary. I'd spent a long time confusing the two. My truck is fine, by the way. I had it fully inspected after everything settled, just to have a clean record of its condition. Not a scratch on it from any part of this whole situation.
Which is almost funny when you think about it.
The woman with the cane sent me a Christmas card in December. I put it on my refrigerator, and it's still there. If you read this whole thing and felt your blood pressure tick up at least twice, subscribe because clearly you have the same tolerance for nonsense that I do, which is none.